you guys, it's me, Crystal, and today I want to talk about R.L. Stine's Masterclass because I finished it not too long ago and I thought it was really good. So I want to give you like a brief overview of like what this Masterclass is about and like some highlights from it that I thought were like really good information and was like really interesting. So basically his class is about writing horror for middle grade and young adult audiences and kind of like the differences between the two categories and the differences between like how you write horror and characterization for middle grade and horror and characterization for young adult. And even though I don't write like middle grade and I don't really write YA and I don't really write horror either, I do have like darker stories, but they're more like under the like speculative fiction umbrella, like paranormal, supernatural, stories. Contemporary fantasy, whatever. But I really want to take his class because when it comes to authors that have influenced me or inspired me to write the most, R.L. Stine is definitely at the top. And so I wanted to see like how he works and like how his personality is and things like that, because he's one of those people who it's like I've always wanted to like know like what kind of advice he gives to people and like how, and like I said, just how he gets the stories together, how he has so many ideas in the first place. The guy has written hundreds of books. I think even if you don't write like horror or books for children, he still has like a lot of like really good information that can apply to like everyone. He has a very kind of like different approach to writing than I feel like some other writers do. Like he writes first and foremost for like entertainment. He is a very heavy plotter and planner and outliner. He has like very detailed outlines. Like every single chapter has like a paragraph or more, and sometimes some like quotations, and they're like several pages long, like 15 plus pages long. But one of the things he said that I thought was pretty interesting is he was like, if you know the ending of your book and you know where you're going and you have like an outline, then it's impossible to have writer's block, because one of the main causes of writer's block is taking a wrong turn somewhere or not knowing where to go next. And so it's like if you have everything planned out ahead of time, then you can always look over your outline and kind of fix problems before you even start writing. And then of course you know where you're going to go next because you've planned everything out already. But of course, everybody is different. Everybody works different, and being like a heavy plotter, doesn't work for everyone, which he acknowledges. He acknowledges. But yeah, I did think that was really interesting though. But one of probably the best pieces of advice was like right at the beginning when he was talking about the idea store. And I think like in my entire life, when it comes to like people talking about like how to find story ideas, how to generate ideas, this is like hands down like the best how to find ideas, like advice that I've ever seen in my life. And he talks about how ideas basically come from three main categories, and it's experience, memories, and imagination. And so it's like if when you were a kid and you got lost in a theme park for even 10 minutes, that's extremely frightening. There's a story idea. And of course, our imaginations are limitless. And he was also talking about like drawing inspiration from like movies and TV shows and other books that you like. So if you're like watching Frankenstein, then you can say, what if there was like a dog Frankenstein, and then your imagination can take that and just like run with it and like build an entire story up. And I thought it was interesting too that he has like a character stat sheet. And so basically he has like his characters, like a brief description and like something about them, like they're a cheerleader and they really want to get into Harvard, or it's just some basic like information about them. And I already do this, but it was just fun, to see like an author that influence your writing, that they do that too. So R.L. Stine is like a huge fan of like writing in first person. I think he does have a couple of things that are in third person, but he says like most of his books are in first person. So when he writes middle grade, like when it comes to characterization for middle grade, he likes to have a main character with as few defining like personality characteristics as possible. And he says he gets criticized for that a lot, but the reason why he does that is he wants the characters to kind of be a blank slate so that the kids reading the book can very easily put themselves in the main character's shoes. And having like a blank slate character or like a Mary Sue character is actually really hard to pull off, you know, and like do well and like have it come across like as you want, like empty shoes for you to fill with your own personality traits and, you know, quirks or whatever, and not have the character come across as like flat and boring. But like when he writes for YA, he's like, you know, like that's different. Like the character needs some kind of personality. They need to have goals and dreams, and like what do they need to have things that they want. And he says the reason is because if you have like a kid and they don't really have like any life's dreams or goals or whatever, the kids are like, they don't really seem to care. They want to be the main character and go on this adventure. But when it comes to teenagers, that they're like, they're not going to buy it. So if the main character doesn't have a personality, then they don't feel real to the teenager. Like things need to feel real for teenagers, but things need to not feel real for like the kids. Because if it feels real, they're going to be frightened. But teenagers, they want it to feel real. Like they want to believe that this could really happen, you know? I think adults are like that too. But he says the reason why he likes first person is because it's like right there. You know, it's you know, going down the dark hallway, and it's, you know, it's your heart that's racing and things like that, and that makes it scarier than when it's in third person. So one of the things R.L. Stine is known for is having like these cliffhanger endings for like every single chapter. And I remember reading all these Goosebumps books when I was younger and being like actually really annoyed by it, but at the same time it did work. And so you would have a character and there's like a rainstorm, and they hear the scratching out in the hallway, and so they creep up to their door and they turn the knob and then end that chapter. And so now you're all tense, and so you flip to the next page thinking, oh my gosh, what's out in the hallway? And it's like their dog and a chew toy. And even though you're like, oh, there's nothing there, like, you know, you still have like, you know, your pulse is still racing and you're still like really excited, and so you want to keep reading. And I think that's one of the reasons why I got into the habit of stopping in like the middle of chapters, is just because I knew if I was reading an R.L. Stine book that the end of the chapter would be the worst place to stop. But I thought he had some really good advice for like building tension and building like suspense in a story, and like talking about sensory details and slowing things down, and you know, and how that like it builds like tension and anticipation and excitement. And so he talks about like, he says like when he writes, you know, middle grade horror, that he's not actually trying to scare kids. He just, you know, wants them to be like, it's kind of like, you know, like watching a scary movie. Like you're a little scared while you're watching the movie, but when it's over, like you had a good time, right? It's kind of like being on the roller coaster if you like roller coasters. I don't really like roller coasters, but I like virtual roller coasters, because it's like you're, you know, going on this adventure and then it's over and you're like, oh my gosh, that was fun. Like you get like an adrenaline rush from it. But I remember the first Fear Street book I read, which was like the YA horror series, terrified me. I was in 5th grade. And I stayed up late reading, of course, and I had to go to the bathroom, and I was scared to get out of bed. Like that, I think the book was called The First Horror, and oh my gosh, the ending of that book, it was horrifying, completely horrifying. It's one of my favorite memories, which would make a really good story idea. But yeah, he had some really good advice about like how you can turn anything into a monster. You could turn, like he has like one of his books, like I think it's called It Came From Beneath the Sink, where it was like this really mundane regular household item, a sponge, and he turned that into a monster. So it's like you could turn a stapler into a monster, you know. Because he basically said like a monster is anything that's like out of control, you know, that you don't have any control over. And that could be anything. It could be an inanimate object. It could be the weather. But I thought it was really, really interesting when he talked about like where the, you know, Fear Street came from and how much thought that they put into it. And so it's like he created this entire backstory for this street and like why it's haunted and, you know, why bad things always happen to the people who live on this street. But it's like he created the backstory before he wrote any books set on Fear Street, and I just thought that was awesome. And so then he had like a section for like writing as a career and promoting yourself, like especially as a middle grade author. And I thought he had some really good like advice and like tips and things for that. It's like, you know, like doing school visits and like going to where, you know, kids are like at school and doing like book talks or, you know, writing talks or whatever, just going to school and like getting your name out there, because like word of mouth, you know, back then, you know, when Goosebumps books and stuff first started coming out, I think like the 90s, and now, like, the best marketing is always word of mouth. It's, you know, like, that's one of the reasons Harry Potter blew up so much. Like, one of my cousins, he was talking about how, like, that's how he got into Harry Potter. Like, all the kids in his class, they were all around Harry Potter's age. They were all reading these, you know, this Harry Potter book. And so then he started reading it, and then he grew up, you know, as Harry was growing up. And I thought that was really cool because I didn't start reading Harry Potter until I was in college. And that's how I got into Fear Street books. I was sitting next to this girl, and we both, like, were always had our noses in a book. And so, like, she saw what I was reading one day, and then she's like, hey, when you're done reading that, and when I'm done reading this, you want to, like, swap and, like, borrow books from each other. And so I borrowed the first horror and the second horror and the third horror from her. And that's how I got started reading Fear Street, was word of mouth, recommendations from a classmate, from a friend. But yeah, and then at the end of his class, he gives you like 20 ideas that he encourages you to take and like write a story about. And that was really cool. And some of those, I was like, I definitely want to write an idea just like that, you know? And so, and one of the fun things about getting ideas too, is that you can give like 100 people like the same idea, and you're going to end up with 100 like completely different stories. And that's just like, it brings back this quote that I like from Neil Gaiman. And he was like, you know, don't worry about like being original or being unique or like worrying about that, you know, those things, because he's like, your story has something that nobody else's story has. You know, your unique vision, your worldview, like nobody can write your story the way you can, and that's true. So I wanted to talk about it because I thought it was really good and really interesting. And he also talks about like humor and a bunch of other things, because there was a lot of videos for his class. But yeah, he's like really funny and he's interesting, and I think it's good to like give people like different perspectives, because like some people, they really want to write like just for entertainment, and it helps them to have somebody who's like successful, who they respect, saying it's okay if you want to write just for entertainment and you don't want to have like some kind of deep life lesson in your work. Because I think people need to hear that it's okay to like do what they want, and it's okay to have fun. And Neil Gaiman also talked about just like relaxing and having fun, you know, because he's like, he knows writers who are like miserable, you know, and they have to force themselves to write, and they're always forcing themselves and being dragged along because they have to write, because they're storytellers. And, you know, when you're a storyteller, like you have to write, like you can't relax. But it's like, I can't imagine being miserable. Like I have to force myself to sit down all the time. But like, you know, I actually do want to write though. It's just like the thought of like clearing off everything and sitting down and doing it, and the task feels so daunting. But like once I'm writing, like I'm not miserable. But, you know, but I like to hear like him say that and Neil Gaiman say that, because it's like, it's okay to enjoy what you're doing. I think Elizabeth Gilbert in her book Big Magic, she also says that it's okay to enjoy what you're doing and enjoy your life and enjoy writing a book and not be miserable. And I just think we need to hear that sometimes as writers. So anyway, so that's all for this video. Happy February to everyone. I am getting the February LitJoy crate because it's a Once Upon a Retelling theme. And if you know me, then you know retellings is like the magic word. Retellings, fairy tales, folklore, whatever. It's a magic word, sold. So I'm very excited because I love retellings. and I'm excited to see what's going to be in the box, which will be at the end of the month. Yeah, so I hope you guys had a great January, and I will see you guys in the next video. Hopefully it won't be at the end of the month, but you know, I'll see you guys then. Happy days. Bye.